Welcome to our post-game show on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. After Ohio State's 35-7 win over Youngstown State in Ohio Stadium on Saturday, Jeremy Birmingham and Austin Ward were at that game for us. They'll, I think, maybe check in with us, Bill. Send us some little messages. Let us know what's going on post-game. You and I watched it from home. That's the plan, so we can do these post-game shows right when the game ends. And we like to start. We know there's, if you don't win 80-0, there's some things sometimes that are reasonable to discuss, but we'd like to start with something you liked. What did you like out of Ohio State's win today?
I think there are kind of two sort of glaring things that I like from this game. So I'll pick one. I'm curious if you end up picking the other. For me, it is the way they got the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. in this game. Had him in the slot a little bit early on. He was in the slot on the second long touchdown that he scored. They had another play. I don't know if it was earlier on that drive or earlier in the game where he motioned in tight to the formation and then motioned through the backfield almost as if he was going to block on a running play. And they ran a play action, got the ball to him quickly in the flat. So he got his touches today. It was his final number is 7 receptions for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. They were much more intentional, about getting him the ball. Easier to do, I guess, against Youngstown State. There was a coverage bust on his first touchdown, a little bit on a cover 2 kind of hole shot from Kyle McCord, but just a much better job of getting Marvin and Emeka Egbuka both their touches this game, and a little bit of creativity to do so with Marvin, which I liked.
First half, Marvin 11 targets, Emeka 7 targets in the first half on 24 passes. 18 of their 24 passes in the first half went to their 2 best receivers. Obviously, the game a little different in the second half. Marvin ended up with 12 targets plus that pass interference call on the deep shot. So I'm super curious if that is a sign of things to come, if that's the new normal, if they can do that against better defenses, because, it felt so intentional. And I thought, Ryan Day really talked about, I thought 2 people above and beyond after that game that didn't get the ball enough. One was Marvin Harrison, one was Xavier Johnson, and they both got fed in the first half.
Yeah.
It's a little different equation. As we know, Xavier Johnson is Marvin Harrison Jr.'s favorite player. He said that, I think, multiple times. So is that sustainable to you? Because it felt constant, but I don't think it felt forced.
Yeah, no, I frankly think they can probably force it more and be a little more creative if they want to. I think that was kind of just a taste, especially for Marvin, of how they want to move him around and ultimately get the ball to him. I think we'll see much more of that probably when they play Notre Dame in a couple of weeks. Maybe they start building toward that with next week's game plan against Western Kentucky as well. I do think the Xavier Johnson touches at time can feel a little forced. He had 3 carries today for 12 yards, and he had 1 reception for 6 yards. Now that's not all on him, but he is, to me, he is not in my opinion, a super explosive guy who's going to do a whole lot unless it's really blocked for him. So, and a lot of those plays weren't. So I'm not really putting that on him. So I think they got to tread a little carefully with the way they want to incorporate Xavier Johnson into the offense. It's fine. You want to be a part of it. I get that he's sort of your 4th receiver right now, and he's a versatile hybrid guy, but I would be a little cautious with those touches moving forward if I were Ohio State.
One of them was like an end around, right?
Yeah.
That you're trying to let him get to the edge. I think the 2 things he does best. One is, I think he finds space and runs good routes as a slot receiver. Mm-hmm. So if that's what he's doing, I'm for it. And then if you line him up in the backfield and hand him the ball, he finds holes between the tackles. He has good vision as a running back.
He does, yeah.
But I don't like to try to get him the ball on a jet sweep or an end around. It's just give it to Emeka there. I don't know why that, because as you said, that's not his explosive thing. So, okay. What did I like? Can I like an adjustment that they made?
Yeah.
Because maybe it's a sign of things to come. One of the things that I like the least, and I know you're a football guy, this is part of what happens in football. I don't like it when they blitz and put their safeties in one-on-one battles in coverage. So they did that early in the game twice, and it was what led to Youngstown State's touchdown. Cam Martinez got hit on a deep shot down the sideline, and then Lathan Ransom on a play where they blitzed 7, got left in coverage and got beat. But the Cam Martinez play, they take Sonny Styles off the field on that 3rd down. They put Cam Martinez at that nickel slot instead. And then after that, it was Jordan Hancock in that spot. And to me, if the reason you're taking Sonny Styles off the field is because you want better coverage skills at the nickel position, play corner.
Yep.
And I think maybe they're there. Do you think they're there?
I do think they're there. Cam Martinez did not come back into the game until late. There's really nobody else there that you would say is a pure cover nickel. Like a lot of the other guys in that safety room are more traditional safeties. I figured we would get to this point. I wasn't sure if it would be game one or if something might happen to get them there more middle of the season. But there was enough talk about Jordan Hancock playing in the slot that I thought that when they played particularly tough matchups, that we would see that. So maybe we got there a little sooner than I thought, but I'm not surprised we're there, and I think it is staying.
It's a little bit. I mean, I don't want to listen. All these guys try their best, but you owe it to the team to put the best guys on the field. You know, they had a situation with Josh Proctor last year where Josh Proctor started, and then once something happened, they determined that wasn't the best thing anymore. I think that might have happened with this job position, and that we did see Jordan Hancock. It does feel like Denzel Burke and Davis and Igbinosun are kind of like the starting corners, and Jordan Hancock's third up in a rotation. And Jordan Hancock was playing some outside corner, but if this is the new world, Jordan Hancock is the nickel cover guy when you want that coverage. That's the only reason Sonny Styles comes off the field, is to put a true corner in there. I think it's a change. That's a change for the whole year. And as you said, if they're going to get there, I'd rather they get there now than get there after Sam Hartman takes advantage of them, or after Drew Aller or Tanner Mordecai takes advantage of them. So then this is a good lesson learned.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's part of it's a lesson from last year, right? Like make sure you have the correct coverage guys, especially in the slot, when you get into passing situations. And they didn't want to like, oh, we'll just see how it goes. And if, it goes wrong sometime, then we'll switch. Like I'm glad almost that they were proactive in some respect about making this change now.
Okay, we have our texters who are going to be involved in this post-game show from now on. We started that this week. This is the first time we had an Ohio State game with our tech subscriber audience. Anybody can join that. If you're listening to this and being like, what? Wow, I'm here for the podcast. I'm here for the YouTube show. What's the texter thing? It's free for 14 days to try. So that means everybody can be part of it. I think of the tech subscribers as like the focus group and the producers for this show. So we have questions from them that we will sprinkle in throughout the show, but I also like doing surveys with them, Landis, and it allows us to get a dedicated, educated, loyal view of the game right when it ends. And I think that's valuable because sometimes if you listen to the squeaky wheels out in the world, maybe you don't get a real handle on the game. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about Ohio State's performance today? 1 is bad, 10 is great, right? So if they would have come out today, last week, Oregon beat Portland State in a similar game, 81-0, you're probably in a 9 or 10 zone with those answers. What do you think the texter average answer is? 1 is bad, 10 is good on today's performance?
Like a 6.
Yeah, 5.7. Yeah. So like, is that a 5.7 against Youngstown State? Is that a problem? Is that a team working some stuff out? This is the nature of the beast when you're playing 2 quarterbacks, which we're going to get to shortly. Or like, it's a 5.7 or 6, not great in week 2.
I think it's a fair reaction. I honestly just don't know how much you're supposed to take out of games against FCS opponents. I guess the one thing I would say is, like, were there things last week that were concerning to you coming out of a week 1 game that just didn't look any better in this game when they should against an FCS opponent? And I think there was some of that, right? Like short yardage running again, I think was not great. They were a little more aggressive throwing the ball down the field, but probably still could have been more aggressive. The defense, I thought, like after being very stout last week, was actually quite the opposite almost on 3rd down in this game, which I think contributed to a lower number in the score column for Ohio State in the end. So it feels right to me. As I don't take it as like, let's sound the alarm bells, Ohio State's not ready for this, because I do think there's general just like weirdness you need to account for in a game like this. This doesn't have a lot of juice. But you would have liked to see Ohio State play better. I thought they would have played better than they played today.
All right, let's get down to beeswax on the quarterback situation. Devin Brown did play more today. Ryan Day, as he noted in this post-game interview, he's still wound up about the plays. I think this is in his head. And it's not wrong, but they ran 60 plays today. They ran 67 last week. They had 9 possessions today. Again, I think it is a much more a function of bad teams sitting on the ball, right? Than the game has immensely changed with the clock rules. Now, the clock rules, I think, almost encourage weaker opponents to sit on the ball. So I understand where Ryan Day's coming from, but I still don't think it's like the end of the world. In the end, so that last little one-play drive at the end where Devin Brown handed off to Mayan Williams, that doesn't count. That was the 10th series. We're not counting that. 6 drives, 3 for McCord, or 3 for Brown. And by the way, Jake Butt at the end of the game on the Big Ten Network was like, and I think we saw that Devin Brown proved he's the guy. And I was like, I can't believe you got to the end of the game and then said the wrong name when you're talking about the quarterback competition. I'm sure there are some Ohio State fans who are like, what? What's he talking about? He just said the wrong name. Devin Brown, 3 drives. Kyle McCord, 6 drives. Devin Brown actually played more plays, though, because he had long drives. And like McCord ends the first drive after 3 plays with the Marvin Harrison touchdown pass. Devin Brown, 60 plays for the team, 32 for Brown, 28 for McCord. McCord, 6 drives, 3 touchdowns, 3 punts. Brown's 3 drives, 2 touchdowns, and then the last drive where they went for it on 4th down and he got tackled. So it's interesting, the perspective. This is why we have to bring fans who really care about the team into it right away. What do you think of these 2 different reactions from our guy, Patrick Exner? Safe to say McCord is the guy. Brown doesn't bring anything extra to the table, at least enough to be a difference maker. Then we have our guy, Clayton. How concerned should Ohio State fans be that McCord couldn't separate himself from Brown? So that's 2 Ohio State fans, texters who love this team, who watch this game. One thinks, that's it, McCord's the guy. Another one thinks, no separation. What do you think, Landis?
Well, that's a boy, Devin Brown doesn't look all that good. Why hasn't the guy who was a presumed starter pulled away from him in any significant way, right? That's what that means.
I think so.
Yeah. So it's a good point to make, because I guess I'll just like cop to being wrong in my assumptions about Devin Brown, because I thought like explosive athlete, playmaker, and he does not look like that. They look pretty similar. So I don't know what to make of that. I don't know that I came away thinking like still that Kyle McCord is like definitely the guy, and that's probably just a function of them kind of looking the same. I think when they were out there, I think Devin was probably done fewer favors with some of the play calling. Like Ryan Day's calling QB counter 3 times for Devin Brown, a play that he doesn't look all that comfortable running. He doesn't call that play for Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord gets to drop back and throw the ball more. So I have the stats flipped here. Kyle McCord was 10 of 14, not 14 of 10. That would be mathematically impossible. So I don't know how I come out of this. I think I see where both those reactions are coming from, and I tend to agree with them. I thought Kyle McCord was probably slightly better today than he was last week, with the exception of a couple misfires, one being the big miss to Marvin Harrison Jr. on 3rd down on the first drive of the second half. And that's part of the reason for fewer plays. Like, yes, you ran fewer plays is because like you weren't that good on 3rd down. Yeah. You made up for it with a couple 4th down conversions, but fewer plays is a function of you not being as efficient as you need to be on 3rd down. It's not merely a function of the new clock rules. And it's a function of also the defense not getting off the field as much as it should have in this game and letting Youngstown State extend drives. Like it all comes together. I agree with you. It is in Ryan Day's head. I don't know if it impacted like the way that he used the quarterbacks though. So I find it interesting that he sort of treats Devin Brown as like more of like this hammer in the run game that I'm not so sure that he is. And Kyle McCord gets like to drop back and throw the ball more.
They were 2 of 12 on 3rd down last week, right? They were 5 of 12 on 3rd down today. And reports from the postgame, Ryan Day's talking about it again. He's talking about the lack of plays. And again, in a world where sometimes you have big plays and that keeps you from it, like they're responsible for some chunk of this, like not getting off the field on 3rd down defensively, which Ryan Day mentioned right after the game, and then not converting themselves. So again, I don't love this conversation. I don't love this conversation because I think it's setting them up for excuses that they sort of don't need to make. You know, like it's one of those things again. There are going to be people who are going to ask about this. The answer is just like, these are the rules for everybody. We have to deal with it. Like to get caught up in it, I just don't think is the way to go. From what Ryan Day is saying post game, he says he doesn't think Kyle really missed any throws, maybe a read or 2. That means he liked how Kyle played. Yep. And they're going to look at the film to see if they name a starting quarterback. Do you think Kyle McCord will be officially named the starting quarterback any more than he already has been for the Western Kentucky game next week?
I do. Yeah. And that's not really me saying that I think he should. I just like kind of think we're there with it. you don't want to. You don't want to be messing around, right? I thought if they wanted to do that and make it a competition, then their opportunity was last week, and they missed it, or they didn't use it. So this is like nothing to me. So I think they got to let Kyle play an entire game, or as much of a game as that is competitive next week. Maybe Ohio State hopes that it's not all that competitive. So I am. Yeah, I'm on alert for it. I think I will not be surprised if that is the rhetoric used next week with Kyle McCord.
I think you don't want to start Notre Dame week by naming your starting quarterback, right?
Yeah.
I think you want people to come in knowing who the starting quarterback is Notre Dame week. I think you name Kyle. And then if you name Kyle is our starting quarterback. Then you can still say Devin's going to play, and you can still give Devin a series in the first half. You can still give Devin the whole fourth quarter, but it's just viewed differently from the fans, from the quarterbacks themselves, from the team. I just think we're there, and I do think there is an advantage to it because I do think a lot of people are feeling what you just said about Devin Brown. This is from Zach Moore. Devin Brown as a dual threat quarterback is a bad rumor. Curtis Mills, does this end the quarterback competition? Kyle looks much more competent, and I don't know what you gain by holding Kyle back. What? I thought the fourth down sack on the drive that ended on downs in the red zone at the end of the game in the fourth quarter was maybe the last dying gasp, because Devin Brown gets some pressure, escapes to the right, and it's like, okay, like if you're drawing up a scenario where you feel like Devin Brown may do this better than Kyle McCord, and he got tackled by a Youngstown State guy in the open field. He didn't stiff arm the guy. He didn't hurdle the guy. He didn't juke the guy. He didn't spin backwards and put his back to the defense and run back the other way. He didn't rip a throw. It's fourth down. Like, you're dead. Like, this is Tate time. Let your full Tate shine. And he just got tackled by a Youngstown State guy. And it's not like it's the worst play in the world, but it was a chance to be spectacular. And the conversations I think that everybody's been having and that we've been having is, why is Devin in this? Upside, get you over the top, the play, the off-platform stuff. And this was an example of it, and it was nothing. And it was like, okay, then play Kyle.
Yeah, I agree. I'm frankly like a little shocked by it, because I would have assumed all those things about Devin Brown myself, and I have articulated them. That was always a shorthand for me, and I think for everybody. Like, Devin has more playmaking. Devin is more athletic. And maybe long term that will prove itself to be true. From what we've seen in these two games, I don't think you can say that. Devin Brown did have the one good play where he extended it and threw the G Scott on fourth down, right? That was a nice play. Kyle McCord had a similar play last week when he converted on third down the chip train him. Like, I think that's almost a wash there. I don't know if Kyle McCord can erase that corner any more than Devin Brown can, but I thought that Devin Brown could, and if he can't, then I'm not really sure what we're doing here, because I think Kyle is a much more consistent passer. Even some of the passes that Devin completed just like came out of his hand weird, and were still completed, which I guess is the only task that the quarterback has. But and I'm not saying Kyle was perfect. If you match him up throw for throw, and I'll go back and look at it, I'm sure that Kyle probably had 2 or 3 missed throws, or off target throws, but I feel like Devin had more. Devin's are more egregious, and the ball just does not come out of his hand the same way.
Listen, we're not here to criticize Devin Brown. We're just saying if someone's going to win the job, Devin had to go win it.
Yep.
That's what this was about. And that's what this opportunity was about. He didn't play in the spring game. Is he going to go win it? He just didn't go win it. It doesn't mean he's not going to be a good quarterback for this team down the line. It doesn't mean they might, now I sound like a coach, doesn't mean they might not need him, because every backup quarterback is one play away. And I do think that Devin Brown is a good backup quarterback at a high level in major college football. So great. But I think it's Kyle. All the texts are just a lot of them. We got more than 100 texts in right after the game. And I had our producer go through. We don't have a producer yet. That's right.
Not yet.
But guess what? We're hiring one. Everybody agrees. And if this, I do think this was part of it for Ryan Day. Put it out there. Let the whole world see it. Now, did Kyle McCord go seize this thing and win it? Maybe not. But I think after 2 games, everybody agrees who the starting quarterback should be. And whatever the divided straw poll was, if you had people in the fan base who were like, I don't know, I don't know that there's going to be many stragglers on this anymore. And I do think in the end, and you and I didn't maybe love how Ryan handled it last week. I think there's reasonable questions about the process. I think what they wound up doing after 2 games is kind of everybody knows who the starting quarterback should be, so they can go ahead and name it and settle this thing. And in that way, they did what they needed to do in 2 games.
Yeah, yes, I guess so. I think it's the same conversation we had last week, right? The result, if the result could be correct, I still don't know that I love the process, because I agree with everything you said, except that Devin was not given the same opportunities as Kyle last week against Indiana. What if he was? I don't know. Maybe a different version of Devin Brown comes out in a game that's a little tighter on the road against a Big Ten opponent, and obviously,
listen, I'm trying to be definitive here. People are confused.
I'm confused.
Can we just be definitive?
I think here's what I think. Based on everything we've seen, yes, I think Kyle McCord probably will more than likely be named the full-time starting quarterback going into the Western Kentucky game. I still, as we sit here today after the Youngstown State game, do not believe that Devin Brown was afforded the same opportunities to win the job that Kyle McCord was in the game.
So that's a process question. Do you believe that Devin Brown gives Ohio State as good of or a better chance to win against Notre Dame than Kyle McCord does? Or is the whole point your answer is, I don't know, he didn't get a chance to show it?
Yeah, that is my answer. Like, based off what we've seen so far, how can my answer be anything other than Kyle? But in the back of my mind, it's like we don't know, because they never really gave Devin that opportunity. They gave him 2 drives last week. One was in garbage time.
I will say this, and you and I and Austin and Berm, we were texting during the game. So if you're a tech subscriber, we try to give you analysis that you're not getting on the broadcast. It isn't, I've been doing this texting thing for years from the press box, and you don't hear the TV thing. And sometimes you think like, I don't know, they're saying the same thing. Oh, we saying the same thing they are on TV. They just don't know the team as well as we do. It's no offense to anybody involved with the broadcast, but like when Jordan Hancock came in the second series and was now the nickel corner, like they didn't even say Jordan Hancock's name the whole game. They didn't notice it. So I thought a defining play, and this was texted out by Austin right after it happened, when Devin Brown has that little rollout to the right and he decides he's going to run, and he's kind of palming the football like it's a basketball. And then he tries to kind of tuck it away, and he takes one hit, and then the second hit pops the ball out. And it's a fumble, and it bounces right back to him, and he recovers it so they don't lose the ball. That closed the door, I think. Ryan Day was like, and that's the end of the quarterback battle, because that could have easily, if it bounces the other way, it's a turnover. And if you are not making spectacular plays, there's no way Ryan Day is going to live with a turnover. And you can't be loose with the ball as a quarterback when you get outside the pocket, when that's the thing you're supposed to do better. I think Ryan Day, like, just that shut off that part of his mind. He doesn't even think it's a battle anymore, I think.
Well, I mean, Kyle was pretty loose with that interception he threw last week, wasn't he?
Yeah, but that was on 4th down. He was trying to make a play. It was on 4th down. And I think like a read, I think Ryan doesn't like it. Again, all coaches hate turnovers. I think Ryan can live with a throwback across the body that you kind of know you shouldn't make as soon as you make it. It was on 4th down, as opposed to you're just outside the pocket and not protecting the ball.
Yeah, they're different, I guess. Yeah, circumstances matter.
Yeah. So congratulations, Landis. Ohio State has a quarterback. You're so excited.
Yeah.
Great. It's what everybody wanted. They want a starting quarterback. Okay, a couple questions for the tech subscribers. We said that the overall performance was a 5.7 on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, 1 being low. So it's barely over, the good side. Level of confidence in the quarterback situation, 6.4. Level of confidence in the offensive line, 4.1. Level of confidence in the defense, 6.8. And then the answer to this question, has Ohio State found its quarterback? Oh my gosh, I put an apostrophe S. What an embarrassing thing. It's not, it is quarterback. Sorry, texters. That's a bad job by me under the heat of the moment, sending out the survey. Yes, it's McCord. He's the man and he'll be good. Got 64%. Yes, it's McCord, but more by default. Still not totally confident. Got 34%. I think it's still up in the air. Got 2% Landis. Oh, wow. So that's 2/3 of the people saying like, yeah, it's Kyle. Let's go. 1/3 of the people saying like, yeah, I guess it's Kyle, but nobody thinks it's a thing anymore. Just you. Were you one of the votes? One of the 2% for it's still up in the air?
I was not one of the votes. And I am in the middle tier there, I think. I am not in the the 2%.
Okay, you're in the. It's Kyle, I guess,
Yeah.
more than
Yeah.
anything.
Right.
Okay.
An unenthusiastic yes.
It will be interesting next week because the thing of it is here, I actually thought credit to Youngstown State for at least trying.
Yeah.
Unlike Indiana.
Uh-huh.
And Indiana, by the way, tried against Indiana State on Friday night. Then they tried. Wasn't it like, do you think Jim Knowles is going to, or Ryan Day is going to call Tom Allen to be like, great, oh, thanks for trying now?
I saw a lot of frustrated Indiana fans on Twitter on Friday night, like mad that they didn't at least try to play offense against Ohio State.
Like, hey, if we would have done that against Ohio State, we might have had something.
Yeah, I don't think anyone thought they would have won, but it would have been a more competitive, entertaining game for them. No one wants to see their team just come out and lay down.
Well, Tom Allen does. Walt Bell does. So credit to Youngstown State for trying stuff. I thought their quarterback did some stuff, right? I mean, their quarterback, especially on that drive, again, the couple third down conversions, their touchdown drive early in the game, 7-7, made some plays, had a nice little like under pressure from Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, pump fakes and makes a throw on the sideline, did some good stuff. But my point is, next week with Austin Reed in Western Kentucky, that guy can sling it, and then Sam Hartman in Notre Dame, we're getting to the point where now, Landis, as people analyze the Ohio State quarterback situation, they're going to be analyzing it against a quarterback who can play. So I'll be curious how Ohio State fans, not how Ryan Day views it, but just how the fan base takes it in. If Austin Reed and Western Kentucky, who are going to air raid it to death and sling it around, if they do that and people go, what? Wait. Is the Western Kentucky quarterback better than our quarterback? Or maybe Kyle McCord comes out and slings it too. But it's going to be a different context.
It will be a different context, and I am curious about what, because I don't necessarily feel like they got caught in between with the two quarterbacks, like knowing both were going to play for Ohio State. But they did some fairly different things with Devin Brown, especially in the run game. Like if you go into a game where it's Kyle, and you're going to treat Devin like purely as a backup quarterback, then does that game plan become a little more in tune with what Kyle McCord's strengths are? Because I still think there's ways for them to do that they haven't necessarily done the first two games.
And as people, for anybody who does want to compare it to 2015 or can't help but compare it to 2015, one of the great downfalls, let's do a little sidebar. It's the Youngstown State game. We have time for a sidebar. 660 people watching the live show right now. Thanks to everybody who's here for that. Did you see Cardale Jones's tweet the other night?
I did not know what he said.
So people, I think, I don't like when people do this, but like Joe Burrow and Nick Bosa signed their big contracts this week. And so I did send some texts about like, hey, if you could have Burrow and Bosa in 17 together, right? If Joe hadn't gotten hurt in 17 and he still could have been in the quarterback battle, maybe he wins the battle in 18 and then Nick doesn't get hurt in 18. So that 18 team could have had Nick Bosa and Joe Burrow as the starting quarterback. Instead, Joe's gone because he breaks his hand in 17 and Nick gets hurt in the middle of game 3, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a reasonable thing, like to have some regrets about that era of, as I said, Nick Bosa and Joe Burrow combined in their Ohio State careers play fewer snaps as a Buckeye than Denzel Burke's already played as a Buckeye. And people know that, but it's just one of those things. And you think about the talent that was around, like the 2017 team. Again, this, I think it matters because Burrow and Bosa were both like at a point where they could have been playing at that point. The 17 Ohio State roster has a number 1 pick, 2 number 2 picks, number 3 pick, and number 4 pick on that team. Because they have Burrow, they have Nick Bosa and Chase Young, who are both 2. They have Jeff Okudah, who's 3. They have Denzel Ward, who's 4. Yep. So it's bonkers. People are saying stuff about the 15 team because Joe Burrow was like a freshman, a first-year guy there. And I can't believe the 15 team had so much talent. They had Joe Burrow. It's like Joe Burrow looked like he was in 8th grade that year. So like that's not the comparison to me. But that was the tweet that all the people who after Burrow and Bosa are sort of like, oh, I can't believe Ohio State didn't do more. And they're talking about the 15 team. I just think throwing Burrow in with the 15 team is stupid. But anyway, there's a tweet. I think it was our guy, Albert Breer, loyal listener, NFL Network, NFL Guru, Buckeye. Like, I'll never get over the 15 team was like Albert Breer's tweet.
Yeah.
And Cardale Jones retweeted it and said, like, ask Ed Warner. So that 15 season, you knew it at the end of 15 because at the end of 15, it was almost like the offensive line versus the quarterbacks because after they lost to Michigan State, The offensive line came out the next week against Michigan and like wanted to run the ball to prove that it like wasn't Ed Warner's fault, that it was Tim Beck's fault. And the quarterbacks, JT and Cardale, have always been like, it's not Tim Beck's fault, it's Ed Warner's fault, which is dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Which is dysfunctional. It's a team. But I do think that neither Cardale nor JT played their best ball that year. They have good relationships, I think, still with Tim Beck. I don't want to speak for them, but I think that's the case.
They went to Texas, I think, when Tim Beck was there. Yeah.
He didn't get the best out of the quarterbacks, right? So anyway, I thought one of the things among the many things they did wrong in 2015, and this is why we're bringing it up, is when they put Cardale in, they didn't install a Cardale offense. They had Cardale play the JT offense, or you know what I mean? Like, and I thought these are two very different quarterbacks in 2015, JT and Cardale. In addition to not knowing how to get the ball to the bevy of playmakers, they didn't know how to call the game for each of those guys differently. So the reason I brought it up was because, you know, friendly fire is always interesting. It's like, did you see what Cardale said about Ed? Everybody piles on Ed now that he's left. Poor Ed. He's in Florida Atlantic with Tom Herman. It's a reunion. We should go down. You and I will do a live post-game show from Florida Atlantic after one game. Now they can call it for Kyle. And the difference between Kyle and Devin is not as stark as the difference between Cardale and JT, but still there's something to the idea of, okay, and listen, Ryan's capable of knowing who's in the game and trying to accentuate the strength of either. But when it's all about one dude, he is the starter. This is what we're going to do. I do think it enhances the chances of bringing out the best in Kyle, which is what you just said, much shorter.
Yeah, I agree with that. And to your point, I don't think it's drastically different from what they would do if it was Devin Brown moving forward. Had Devin Brown shown more as a runner on this limited carries so far this year, maybe I'd think differently. But I think if they want to use quarterback run with Kyle McCord, I think they can, and it would probably look just as effective as it has looked with Devin Brown in there. We saw that scramble from Kyle in the first game that I thought was promising. And I want to see them now kind of dial in the passing game a little better with what I think works with Kyle McCord. I actually think that the 2018 passing game with Dwayne Haskins, so a lot of that like intermediate crossing stuff, I think could work quite well with Kyle McCord as quarterback. Yeah. He might be more equipped to attack downfield more consistently perhaps than Dwayne was, but get the ball into the hands of your playmakers as quickly as possible. That was the secret sauce of 2018 for as good and productive as Dwayne Haskins was. They weren't like reinventing the wheel there with the way they were throwing the football that season. And I don't think they need to do that with Kyle McCord. And I also think, you know, you see that the pinpoint accuracy of CJ Stroud is not necessarily apparent with either of these quarterbacks. So maybe you take some of that kind of burden off of the passer as well.
Before we leave the quarterback conversation, and we'll leave it here in a second because there's many other things to talk about, is any part of this process a backward-looking reappreciation of CJ Stroud? Because by the end of CJ's career, there were definitely some people who were not full CJ believers after losing 2 games to Michigan, and they didn't get over the top against Georgia. Any of that happening here?
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if there is. I think that the remaining unknown with both of these guys, and I think like the ultimate comparison to CJ is going to be like, what kind of gamer are you? Because I think that was a frustration with CJ sometimes, is like when things got a little sideways, his body language wasn't always the best. He didn't always go make that play until the Georgia game when he did it quite often. So when they get into a tough game, maybe it's a Notre Dame game, how does Kyle McCord rise to that occasion? I think that's where the comparisons ultimately start. But in terms of just like pure accuracy and throwing acumen, yeah, these guys are nowhere near as good as what CJ was last year. Maybe CJ as a first year starter in 2021 is a little more comparable to these guys, but even then I think he was a little better, which is fine. Those were his strengths. Kyle McCord's and Devin Brown's can be different as long as they're accentuated the right way in the offense is all that matters.
And I do think we don't exactly know, assuming it's going to be Kyle, do we know exactly like what Kyle McCord's special trait is? And again, I think like he's done some very good things, but I think I am curious to watch that evolve, right? On the tough third down play, does he do it with his mind, with his arm, with his legs, with his toughness, right? Is he up there changing protections and making I want to know. It's probably in there. I'm super curious to see it come out.
Yeah, as am I. CJ's, I know you guys talked about this on Bucket Tech, like CJ's was his mind, But there was also like a tangible physical thing there too with his ball placement that really
Yeah.
started to shine. Probably like after he sat after that Oregon game as a first time starter in 2021, and then just kept building over the course of his career. We have not probably had the stage yet for that to come out for Kyle or Devin, but I am likewise curious to see what that is.
Kyle McCord, 14 of 20, 258 yards, 3 touchdowns, ran it once for 1 yard. Devin Brown, 7 of 13 for 101 yards, no touchdowns, ran it 6 times for 9 yards. And again, it felt a little forced on that. And then when he had an opportunity to sort of make some magic happen on his own running the ball, there wasn't necessarily magic there. Okay, we got to talk about Marvin Harrison. We got to talk about the offensive line. We got to talk about the defense. And we're going to do all of that next on the post-game show on the podcast. All right, that's just a little break for everybody to catch their breath for 2 seconds. If you're joining us here live on the show, we're so excited that you're here. We hope you make us part of your regular post-game deal with Ohio State. It's going to be a banger after Notre Dame, Landis. I mean, it's going to be in the middle of the night, but we're going to do it, right?
Yeah, it's going to be one way or the other. It's going to be a banger. Which way, I'm not sure yet.
Don't you think people stay up with us, though, right?
Yeah,
we're doing it at midnight. People stay up with us.
Yeah, I am not fearful of not having an audience for that one.
Because it will either be super exciting or super sad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's at this point, I don't think anybody's taking that for granted at this point. I don't know that that's a world where it's like, well, they beat Notre Dame, but it was only 28-13. And I think people will be excited if this Ohio State team beats Notre Dame, because I think Notre Dame's got a little something. They're playing still. They were in a huge lightning delay. So they are still going on, even though they kicked off the same time as Ohio State, 17-7 in the middle of the third quarter at this point. But this is not, I don't think anybody for Ohio State is sitting here after week 2 being like, South Bend, no biggie.
No. And I don't think anyone has thought that at any point leading into this season. Because like last year's game wasn't a runaway. Notre Dame is conceivably a little bit better this year. And Ohio State is, in some respects, I guess, a little bit worse, at least on offense. So, yeah, it's shaping up to be the kind of game where I don't think anyone cares what the final margin is, as long as it's a win.
All right, let's talk more about the receivers as we get into this. We did brush on it early because you like them getting the ball to these guys. Combined 21 targets for Emeka and Marv in a world where they had 60 plays. So
Yeah.
a third of their plays were throws to their 2 best receivers. Is that the threshold? Is that what we should expect? Hey, a third of your plays, the ball is in the hands of your 2 best dudes.
Yeah, I think it should be, right. I don't know. Some people might think that's forcing the issue, I suppose. And you don't want to be throwing the ball in the double coverage all the time when you're doing that. I understand that. That's not really what I'm saying. But if the opportunities are there, you need to take them. And then you also need to try to manufacture them yourself, which they did a little bit more in this game. I think did better in this game. Looking back, did not do nearly well enough or often enough, I think, against Indiana, which is fine. You won the game. But I think moving forward, and next week maybe is not the best example because Western Kentucky's defense is not all that great. But in the big games, you want to be living in this world, yes. So I think you want to be developing those habits in the games that aren't quite as big. So I have no issue at all with that breakdown.
5 catches for 98 yards for Cade Stover last week against Indiana. Did not get targeted against Youngstown State. G. Scott had the 1 catch on the nice scramble, the rollout you were talking about. The Devin Brown hit G. Scott for a first down. G. Scott had a really nice block on the edge on a Travion Henderson touchdown run. I thought it was nice to see G. Scott make some nice plays in this game. There's actually a point that I want to get to. You're so good on this part of it, contextualizing how the plays all fit together. There's a 2-part thing. The first is 5 for 98 for Cade last week in a world where we thought Emeka and Marv didn't get it enough. Now this week, nothing for the tight ends, and they feed the receivers. Is that related? Is that okay? If you're going to do this to the receivers, that opens Cade up. We'll take that. Oh, okay. Now you have to cover Cade. Now here come the receivers. I mean, it's maybe that this season will be that. Maybe there won't be consistency, and there'll be wild swings week to week based on what a defense is willing to give them.
Yeah, I just don't think Youngstown State is equipped to take away Marvin Harrison Jr. or Emeka Egbuka, and Indiana did an okay job of that. Like, tangent off that is don't let them do it, do something different. But in a world where that is happening, then I think it does open up the tight end touches, the running back involvement in the passing game more. So it's nice to have a counter. Like when teams do try to take away your best stuff, it is good to have a counter punch. I think there have been times here in the past where that wasn't always the case. And it does, small sample size, appear to be the case thus far. But I am as much as I love a nice versatile tight end, I would rather see the receivers get the lion's share of the targets every week, sort of regardless what the defense is trying to do to you. So I'm never going to be upset about the tight ends not being involved in the passing game.
All right, I gotta detour here for a second. I'm running through the tech subscriber questions as we get them, and in an ideal world, I would have grouped them all together, and we'd have this for this area. That's not what I'm doing right now. This is from Justin. I just wonder. There must be people feeling this because again, they were under a 6 for how you felt about the performance. I'm not sure I have a question, but just a comment or two. I'm not angry or emotional. This team just isn't good enough to win the conference or make the playoff. That's okay. 9-3 kind of year. Offensive line is very weak. Playing unders will be easy money until Vegas catches on. Do we want to disabuse Ohio State fans of that notion? Like, hey, they're just not good enough. I'm kind of throwing in the towel on playoff expectations. I'm already lowering my bar for this year based off 2 weeks, or is that like not an unreasonable reaction?
I think it's a perhaps healthier approach to being a fan, to not quite set your expectations championship or bust and basically always set yourself up for disappointment. I don't know that I have watched Ohio State play the last 2 weeks and thought to myself, oh, they're not good enough. I think there are parts of this team that aren't good enough to win a playoff game if they had to go play it tomorrow. That's certainly true. If they were playing Michigan next week, I wouldn't feel great about that. But they play Michigan at the end of the year, and the playoffs are in January. They don't have to play Notre Dame for 2 more weeks. So I don't know if that makes them any different than a lot of teams that have things to work through in the offseason and the early part of the year, with especially in a world where they're trying to figure out who their quarterback is and they have 3 new starting offensive linemen. So no, I would say if you're at that point, I wouldn't be there with you. But I guess there have been signs, right? There have been signs that this will not maybe be the most prolific Ohio State offense we've ever seen. But I don't know that it needs to be for them to win a national championship either. So like there's a lot of different ways you can do that, and we don't know what form this team is going to take on just yet.
This is from Daniel. It seems like everyone we heard about in the preseason hasn't shown up yet. And I'll take responsibility for that because Kenyatta Jackson really has not been used through the first 2 games.
Yep.
So like that has not really happened. I was watching CJ Hicks today. They put in the backup linebackers a series before they put in like the rest of the backups for the defense. So Cody Simon and CJ Hicks were in there playing with the starting defensive line and like the starting secondary for the most part. I do think Kai Stokes was maybe in there too with them at one point. But anyway, it was mostly the starters and they were in there. Like, I think he made a play at the end of the game when I was sending out the survey, but like just, not a ton there from that. I was very high on Jordan Hancock. I do think him playing it at nickel is important. I think Sonny Styles has sort of lived up to the hype that we've talked about. There's been, and I don't want to have the full Travion conversation yet, but like if you thought Travion was going to take over the world this year, I don't know that we've seen that. I know, Landis, you and I definitely, and we need to answer questions that are directly related to how we analyze the season before it happened. We thought there was going to be sort of a swarm of young guy talent that was going to play and be dropped on top of the existing talent. And that would help get this team over the top. Carnell Tate got in the game late a little bit, had a nice catch. Are we still is it too early on that? Or are we getting an indication of like, well, they're kind of rolling with a lot of the same dudes from last year?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess if you thought it was the latter, I wouldn't disagree with you, right? Because this was both of these games, the margins were closer than anyone thought they would be. Neither of them ever felt in the balance. They were opportunities to play the younger guys, to give them more run than they got last year, to show perhaps a little bit more of the athletic upside that exists with some of the younger players on this team on both sides of the ball, and they haven't done it. So I don't know if that is an indication that they're just not going to do it at any point this year, or if that is a coaching staff being a little more conservative early on in the year with a newish team, although it doesn't really apply to the defense. I guess the only way you can take it is to go off their track record. So perhaps we were wrong in that assumption that they would sprinkle in those younger guys.
All right, let's go to some defensive stuff. I do think this is worth talking about. Why is the defensive line not able to get a pass rush against a little better than high school linemen? This is from Steven. No, they're better than that. We don't need to talk down Youngstown State. So I am always let's talk about the defensive line pass rush. This was on my list of things that we wanted to talk about. I'm always concerned when Jim Knowles blitzes, especially on third down, because I sometimes think just stay back and it'll be okay. And again, the first drive, the touchdown drive, they bring 5, get beat on the deep throw down the sideline. Then they bring 7 and get beat again on a third down. And I'm like, this is like the Michigan game again. But then there are times when he brings guys. They had a blitz where they basically Tommy Eichenberg and Sonny Styles blitzed together like they were doing a sack race. It's like the 3-legged race. Let's have Tommy Eichenberg and Sonny Styles blitz from the exact same spot. And the back was there. And he was like, what am I supposed to do? And then he did nothing. And then Tommy Eichenberg got a sack and forced a fumble on that play. And they almost got a turnover out of it. They also had at least twice where they brought the backers up in the A gap and then brought the backers and dropped the ends. So they end up only bringing 4, but you have JT and Jack back in coverage and Tommy and Steele getting after it. And then they had like a completion in the middle of the field. And again, I know that's a defensive scheme, but when Cam Brown missed the tackle on the first Michigan touchdown last year, the only help was Jack Sawyer because they blitzed linebackers and dropped edge guys. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know. Maybe if Steele Chambers was there to help, I think they would have had a better chance of having some help there. So I understand why they do it. And a lot of times, sometimes, you go through the course of a football season, where do picks come from? It's from those drop and edge guys on those looks, on those pressures where the quarterback doesn't see that coverage underneath, and all of a sudden you get a turnover. So I understand you have to do it sometimes. I like them kind of playing back, letting their corners play. But that's tied to rush with 4 guys. And it feels like rush with 4 guys. Now, Mike Hall was blowing people up late in the fourth quarter against, I think it's center that was tired. Also, Mike Hall can do that, probably better than anybody on this line. Do they get home enough when they bring 4 and only 4?
No, they haven't been. Last week was a lot of max protect stuff. I don't want to say that I noticed that quite as much this week. I'll have to go back and look at it, I guess, to get a final feel on that. But I do not think they were getting enough pressure with 4. It's weird because I don't think the defensive line played poorly because Youngstown State had a lot of runs that went for like 2 yards or fewer, and I don't think the quarterback was like sitting back there picking the defense apart whenever he wanted to. They were kind of getting the ball out quickly, but even then, I think you still want to see more production than Ohio State had in the backfield on a day when they had 2 sacks and 3 tackles for loss. The entire first half, the only negative play Youngstown State had was that screenplay that got kind of blown up. Every other play was at least back to the line of scrimmage or more, and I don't think that should happen with Ohio State's defense. So, yeah, I think I'm there with that. I said that this week and next week should give you a little bit better idea of where this team is and its ability to generate a pass rush, and it kind of wasn't there against Youngstown State. So if that persists, that is a little bit of an issue, I think. I don't know how it gets unlocked, right? I think like Mike Hall's a good interior pass rusher. Jack Sawyer as a full-time defensive end, I think has not been popping quite the way we thought he might. JT Tuimoloau is, I just don't think a guy who's going to rack up a ton of pass rush production because of the nature of the kind of defensive end he is, but that's fine. But then you need to be able to supplement that with other guys. And that hasn't really happened. And Kenyatta Jackson, a guy who we thought would do that, just hasn't played a ton. So I don't know where it comes from, but I do think it is now moving up my list of concerns, I guess, because I thought it was going to be a strength of theirs this year. And thus far it hasn't really shown up.
It moves up the list of when you think about the Notre Dame offensive line.
Yeah.
Sam Hartman just might have all day. He might have all day. And I don't know anything about the Western Kentucky offensive line right now, but I'll be very curious what that looks like. I mean, they'll get it out quick also, right? But
they don't give up a lot of sacks.
You mentioned that.
Yeah, right. Like a shockingly low number of sacks for a team that throws as much as they do.
So what did you think of the overall defensive effort? Again, I think, in the survey, people feel better about the defense than they did about like the overall gameplay, and then they do about the quarterback. Quarterback is a 6.4 and defense is a 6.8. But I thought the defense was pretty darn good. I thought last week's defense was, even against a triple option team that wasn't trying to do anything other than turtle, I thought last week was maybe like an 8.5 for the defense. And maybe today is more like only gave up one touchdown. But Youngstown State did move the ball a little bit, more like a 6 today. I don't know. I still think, I thought Denzel Burke was really good today, right? I mean, he continues to be,
awesome.
He's the best player on the, Sonny's Sonny. Sonny's a rare dude, but just like do your job, be a veteran and make plays, be reliable and have an upside. I think Denzel Burke's the best player on this defense right now.
Ooh.
And maybe Tommy.
I mean, yeah, I think he's in the conversation. He's played very well the first 2 days. Got their first interception since the Penn State game in the 2021 season for a cornerback. I was curious how far back that went. It went back farther than I realized. I thought the defensive plan was odd. I thought it was pretty aggressive. I'm curious to look, and we probably won't be able to see that until Sunday on what exactly the blitz rate was, but it seemed pretty high compared to last week when I think they only blitzed once on passing downs. And I think that contributed to Youngstown State's success on third down, which then sort of had an adverse effect on Ohio State's ability to put more points on the board. Youngstown State was, 7 of 15 on third down, and just was able to move the chains a little bit because I just thought they were, Jim Knowles is contributing too many guys to the pass rush and leaving guys on islands or just playing soft coverage and kind of giving up the sticks when the rush didn't get home. And it was odd to me. I think a game plan more similar to last week for the defense yields different results on third down and then gives Ohio State maybe another opportunity or two to have the ball and try to put another touchdown or two on the board. So I don't think they played poorly. And I think it's the kind of game where you can be aggressive and get away with it, obviously. As long as it's not an indication of where Jim Knowles is going moving forward, because I thought his aggression last year got them in a bind. And I know you think that too. Then I'm okay with it. But it didn't really do him any favors, I didn't think, on Saturday. I will say, they settled in. Youngstown State had I think it was a 56% success rate in the first quarter, which is pretty damn high for an FCS team against an FBS opponent. They finished the game at 36%. So Ohio State's defense figured them out and kept them out of the end zone, and that's all they're supposed to do. But I think it could have been a different margin had Jim Knowles not been so aggressive.
Well, to be fair, it's not all they're supposed to do because Ryan Day wants more possession. So they're supposed to get stops on third down and get the ball back to the offense, which I mean, again, you can look at the scoreboard and say Ryan Day wants the ball back. He wants his offense to get more plays. So that part of that is on the defense. Let me ask this. This is my, if they ask me, this is my defensive game plan. Anytime you're getting in a situation where you feel like maybe you want to get after the quarterback, blitz Tommy Eichenberg as much as you want. That guy is like the Ewoks had the two big logs, and they had the logs on ropes, and they swing together, and the two logs smash the stormtrooper on the speedy thing, right? Yep. Tommy Eichenberg is like a one-man log attack, and he is log attacking through the A-gap. I would log attack Tommy Eichenberg every third down. I don't care. Fine. So bring 5. 5's okay. And then I would just have Steel Chambers and Sonny Styles patrol. Let the corners cover, and anything else, tell Steel Chambers and Sonny Styles if there's anything in the middle of the field, if they throw anything short and try to pop something on a yards after the catch kind of throw, if there's a ball in the air and the corner needs help, you got to get there. Let those guys do that. He likes to blitz Steel with Tommy sometimes, and I think Tommy's enough. I like Steel sideline to sideline, but just make it hard in the middle of the field and hope Tommy can get through a couple times. But when he brings 7, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Because all they're doing then, especially if you get in a matchup that you don't trust with a safety on a slot guy, there's just a quarterback back there throwing off his back foot and throwing it up into the air into a matchup that you don't like.
He likes that cross dog blitz with the two linebackers where they kind of one sort of pins a defender or offensive player inside, and then the other one wraps around. And it got home on the sack. Or no, that was more of an edge pressure on the sack, I guess. It almost got home on one of the third downs, but then it didn't, and they converted. I think that was the Cam Martinez play. There was another one where they did it, and I think Youngstown State converted again. So I think it's a game where you're trying to rack up some stats for some of your guys. I guess I'm willing to chalk it up to that, and then we'll see what they do from here. But I just didn't think it was a particularly sound defensive plan on a day that should have been like a name your score kind of day for Ohio State. And granted, like the offense didn't do everything it needed to do when it did have the ball, but it probably should have had the ball more. I don't disagree with Ryan Day on that notion. So good enough performance from the defense, I guess, but odd plan.
Is Knowles a fraud?
Is Knowles a fraud?
It's one of the questions from our guy Justin. It's a hard spot.
It's a weird question to ask when they gave up a touchdown and 234 yards, but
which is it is very difficult. I do think my suggestion would be to talk people off the ledge of our coaches frauds, and is Ohio State going 9-3? I don't think like that's it, but there's legitimately things that have to get better.
Yeah.
If you thought like, they're the best team in the Big Ten, they're going to roll through. Like, I don't think that's where we are right now.
No.
But I do think is Knowles working it out a little bit? Because I think the major question of all this stuff is, okay, can it get better? So as we'll leave the defense here in a second. Is he experimenting? Is he checking on what his guys know? Is he trying to figure out what can I do with Sonny? Okay, how do we want to use the guys up front? Is he experimenting still early on?
Possibly. I don't know. They did seem to have a little bit of different plan for Sonny in this game than they did last week. Like Sonny did not play as many snaps because there was a lot of nickel and like true nickel with Jordan Hancock. I still think there's stuff they need to get into with CJ Hicks and Mitchell Melton. Especially
Not close.
Especially if those guys
sniff of that.
If they're providing pass rush upside, which is kind of what we heard about them, then they need it. Like it's not coming from Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. They need to get more guys like that on the field. Even if it's like Caden Curry, I think gives you a little something there too. So I think there's probably more experimentation he can do with that. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's feeling stuff out. I think there's a little bit of a looming question now, like what's going on at the free safety position.
Because all right, let's talk. What is going on?
Josh Proctor didn't play. Dressed but didn't play. Was nursing an ankle injury at the end of last game. Malik Hartford started, but then did he come off after the first drive? Did he play the second drive? I can't remember. I thought that he made a mistake on the touchdown play that Youngstown State scored. They were having a hard time getting lined up on that drive. They had to burn a timeout on the third play of the game because the safeties didn't know how to line up. And then later in that drive, another shift, a similar thing happens. Lathan Ransom and Sonny Styles both kind of crash on the inside run, and the quarterback just walks into the end zone around the edge. That to me felt like a spot where Malik Hartford needs to play back a little more and protect that edge, and he didn't do it. And then we didn't see him much after that. Austin Ward did tell us that Malik Hartford looked like he was walking gingerly on the sideline. And then at the end of the game, I think they put Kai Stokes in instead of Malik Hartford. But Jahad Carter played the majority of the free safety snaps in this game. I thought he was fine. He had a dumb penalty, hitting a quarterback late on a slide. I wouldn't say that he stood out as playing poorly. I also don't think he stood out as like impressing me as much as Josh Proctor did last week or Malik Hartford did last week. So that is an ongoing competition, I guess, at a spot that is, I don't know, in a safety-driven defense, the most important position on the defense. It's probably not a great situation to be in.
I wonder, could they get, I guess you can't. You can't get to a spot where Lathan's the deep safety, Sonny slides to the Lathan bandit spot, and you play a corner at nickel safety more often than not, can you? Can you play Jordan Hancock 55 snaps a game and have him in on first down, or will you not be good enough against the run?
Yeah, or you can just play Sonny as a Sam linebacker and just play two safeties and two corners.
No, I know, but I'm trying to figure out like if you would get to a point where, and Josh Proctor played well last week, but if you weren't exactly sure about any of the options at the adjuster spot, Proctor or Carter or Hartford, could you play Ransom there? Or is that not?
It probably doesn't suit his strengths. I think he's more of a down in the box guy, because I would have thought last year that he would have played that, and they just never gave him a look there because I don't think that they believe that he could do it consistently enough. Middle of the field is probably not where you want him. He has the experience, I guess, but in terms of skill set, probably not. I think it's people made this point in the offseason too, and perhaps we didn't take it seriously enough when we heard it. Like, is there a true free safety on this defense? I don't know. I think they all might be best suited to play down in the box, but someone's got to play deep.
It is one of those things, and that's why I brought it up with CJ, because I do think one of the best ways to appreciate an Ohio State player is to see what happens when he's gone. And man, they miss Jordan Fuller. Who knew?
It's exactly what they need, man.
Oh my God. It's
Yeah,
like
no frills.
it's like, oh, we're like, I don't know. Is Jordan Fuller that good? I don't know. And there's like, no, he's very, very good. The eraser. Okay. So I think we have a handle on the defense, and people are curious. I do think, will we find out a significant amount more next week against Western Kentucky with the way they're going to get after it?
Yeah, they're going to be tested in a way that they haven't been tested probably since Jim Knowles has been here. This is a pretty unique dynamic passing attack that they're about to face against Western Kentucky. So I am about as curious as I've been about Ohio State's defense and how they're going to handle that next week.
Okay. Second break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the offensive line. We'll do that next on the postgame show on the podcast. Doug and Bill, if you want to be a tech subscriber, 614-662-4509. You get a 14-day free trial. It's $5.99 a month after that. It's like 20 cents a day. So we don't try. I mean, our goal is to bring you value for that. We know it's not nothing. $6. I mean, like, it's not nothing. And there's a lot of ways that you can get, inside sports information out there. But the thing that we like about it is it comes right to you. You don't have to look for it. And we really want to build a sense of community here. So listen, man, we're not dropping like every kind of like, oh, a little whisper, like little whisper text. It's not a little whisper text. It's not like a nudge, nudge, nudge. Hey, 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 hoo-ha. I got a thing. Oh, look at that. It's not, but it's talking about the team you really care about with 4 people that you trust, and maybe you like at least 3 of them. And it just keeps your team kind of with you all the time. And we are bringing you expertise, and we are bringing you insight. And, if you want to come join us, it makes you part of the podcast. We'd love to have you. 614-662-4509. All right, let's talk offensive line. Let's start with something that you brought up in our Slack chat, which we are also doing the same time we're texting each other. Texting to the texters, we're like talking with each other so everybody knows where we are and who's doing what. Josh Simmons at left tackle had a holding penalty early in the game, and you said it wasn't his fault.
Well, I don't want to quite take it that far. I thought on that particular play, it was a run into the short side of the field. I thought Cade Stover kind of hung him out to dry. There was a defensive end that was more lined up over like the outside shoulder of Josh Simmons, almost over Cade Stover. And they had a quick double team, and then Cade got off of that guy quickly. And Josh Simmons is required, I think, to like try to overtake that guy and then turn him away from the play. It's just a really hard block. On the other hand, he could just drive him out of the play, and he didn't do that. So, like, he still held him. It was still not the best technique in the world. But I thought that was more because of just like a lack of cohesive play between tackle and tight end than it was pure miscue by the tackle and stuff they need to continue to work through. Like, I thought, like, Cade Stover, I think did not have a good blocking game in this game. I actually thought it was quite bad, both in space and in line. And that was one instance of that. On that play, he and G. Scott ended up blocking the same guy. It didn't matter. Like, a guy on the edge who was like inconsequential to the play because the guy that Cade and Josh Simmons were supposed to initially block got through the backfield and made the tackle.
How concerned are you guys that they didn't even attempt to get anyone else reps at left tackle today? That's from David F. That's not where they are right now. I did not think, I don't think anyone thought Josh Simmons played well in the first half last week. Got better as the game went along, but I don't think they're anywhere close to actually experimenting at that position right now because, again, I don't think they really believe they have another legitimate option. But also, if you're going to bring this guy from San Diego State and give him the job, like, you have to let him play. Do you think they're anywhere close on trying somebody else at left tackle, even for a series?
No, because if they were, they would have done it today. I was on alert for it. I was like, oh, they're going to play Luke Montgomery or Tager Chabola. I forget which drive it was. Might have been the second quarter. Because Josh Simmons had another penalty, right, that took a touchdown off the board.
Yeah, hands to the face, knocked it, like, kind of almost like face masked the guy and pulled his helmet off.
Right. So I think it was after that point that I thought, like, oh, I wonder if they'll try somebody else here. Not that I necessarily thought they should, but just that they could if they wanted to, and then they didn't. So they're not there. I think this is their 5. I did not think Josh Simmons' play was atrocious for the entire game. The penalties were bad. But he also had a pretty nice block on one of the touchdown runs too. And
He kind of cleared it out. They kind of came back after the first Travion touchdown on the Simmons penalty got wiped off the board. They came back with like a similar play 2 plays later, and Simmons, and I think with help from tight end, kind of cleared out the whole left side.
Yeah, I just remain, curious what's going to happen when there's athletes across from him, because that did not always look great in the opener against Indiana when like Andre Carter was there, and he'll play better ones as the season progresses. So I don't know that I would say this was like a building block step in the right direction on top of how he played last week. It was kind of just more of the same, which is like not the worst game from a left tackle I've ever seen, but also should be better for Ohio State. So we'll see where it goes, but I think it's pretty clear that they don't have any intention on throwing some other guys out there to see who could stick.
It does feel like it's a decent chunk about the cohesion on the offensive line. There was a play in the early middle part of the game where Donovan Jackson at left guard and Josh Simmons at left tackle were blocking the same guy, and a late blitzer came through Donovan's spot and created a problem. And then there was a similar play later in the game where Donovan was on a guy, Josh was kind of doing nothing, and a blitzer came and Donovan passed his guy off to Josh, and Donovan took the blitzer, and it was like, oh,
yeah,
that is progress. So the things you're talking about with what Josh Simmons and Cade Stover are doing together, or what Josh Simmons and Donovan Jackson are doing together, like those kind of things, making sure everybody knows who's supposed to do what. You can understand why that is taking time on an offensive line with 3 new starters, but also like they got to figure it out.
Yeah, they do. And I also, this is more anecdotal than anything else because I'm not going to be able to go back and actually tally it up until later this weekend. But it does feel like they are like running to the left side a lot more than they're running to the left side.
Running to the left more than to the right?
More than running to the right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I would think like you want to get a little bit of run game going behind Josh Fryer and Matthew Jones, and maybe it's more balanced than I'm giving it credit for, but it did feel that way in this game. So I don't know what that's about. I'll have to tally it up and look at it. But those two, yeah, those guys have to gel and play together. They got to, Donovan Jackson has to learn how to do it with Carson Hinsman. Matt Jones has to learn how to do it with Carson Hinsman, and Matt Jones has to learn how to do it with Josh Fryer. I don't think this was a terrible game for the offensive line. I guess like you're playing an FCS team, you want to see them just come out and mash and run the ball and do whatever you want. And they didn't quite do that. They didn't run the ball a ton compared to last week, but they finished with 130 or 123 yards on 27 carries, less than 5 yards a carry. That is not great when you're playing this kind of defense. In fact, that's probably pretty bad when you're playing this kind of defense. So I don't know. They got to keep gelling, I guess. They're not. If I thought that it was like a no doubt about it guy that should be playing over one of the 5 right now, I would say it. I don't know that that's the case. And if they were going to show us any of that, I think they could have done it today, and they didn't do it. So that leaves us in a position where the only thing we can assume is that they like this 5 and they're going to move forward with them.
If there was a no doubt about it guy, the San Diego State right tackle wouldn't be starting at left tackle for Ohio State.
Yeah, right.
I did think the play where Devin Brown got flushed out on 3rd and 25, and then Youngstown State hit him out of bounds, like kind of by accident, whatever, but it was a terrible Ohio State play, and it should have been a punt, and instead the drive was extended by the Youngstown State play. Josh Fryer olayed his the edge guy over Josh Fryer at right tackle, dropped an inside move. Josh Fryer literally did not touch him.
Yeah, Fryer was better last week than he was this week. I watched him a little more closely than I did the left side. He had a couple, I guess, miss hits, I would say, in the run game. One on a Devin Brown counter play where he just like pulled and kind of whiffed on the guy he was supposed to block. There was another running play in the second half that stood out to me too, where Fryer was not particularly strong. So that was a little bit of a bummer, I guess, because I thought he was like, he was the lone bright spot on a day where the offensive line was not great
last week
against Indiana. I was like, okay, here we go, ready to roll. And then he was not quite that good against Youngstown State. I don't think that's like, that could very well mean nothing, but because of the sleepy nature of the game, I guess, and the opponent. But you would have liked to see stepping stone for someone on the offensive line. I don't know, just collectively, I don't think they took that next step. They were just kind of stagnant.
I don't want to overstate this, and clearly they've had to deal with free blitzers and passing guys off and that kind of thing. That move, the inside move on Fryer, where he got right by him and blew up the play, I honestly, it feels like it might be the only snap in 2 games where an edge guy that Ohio State is facing has actually tried to do a move on one of the tackles. Like, that's the thing that to me is the most concerning. And we kind of divided it up what we're going to watch. I've mostly watched Josh Simmons and focused on that the last 2 weeks. You've more tried to focus on Josh Fryer. I just don't feel like Josh Simmons has seen that at all. And when he has a guy right across from him who just like kind of tries to bull rush him, like Josh Simmons can move his feet and stay in front of the guy. And I think they run to the left because I think they like him climbing to the second level. He can climb and get to a linebacker. Like he can do that. I just think when it's what I thought from San Diego State, when it's not right in front of him, then okay. Like, so the world where someone is going to have a toolbox as an edge rusher and try to do some stuff, I feel like we have no idea about either Ohio State offensive tackle at this point. And again, when's that going to happen? I don't know, because that might not even happen against Notre Dame. It's going to happen against Penn State, though. It's probably going to happen against Wisconsin. It's going to happen against Michigan. And that's the real concern for me, even as they continue to sort of maybe not dominate in the run game.
Yeah, and that's all fair. And it's like I don't necessarily think that is like an alarming kind of path for an offensive line. Like the last time I feel like we were having this conversation was like back in 2014, right? But they ended up playing Bud Foster and a Virginia Tech defense in the second week of the season that could really exploit some of the areas where they were deficient, and that just hasn't happened yet. And that might not happen until the middle of the season. We'll see. Like Notre Dame has talent. Like I don't want to lump them in with Youngstown State and Indiana. I just don't think that defensive line is as good as it was last year. But I still think it's pretty good. It'll be by far the stiffest test they face in the first month of the season. It's not even worth putting it in comparison to the others. But it might not be so dynamic that it makes Ohio State's offense unravel. So if that's not the case, then they have, 7 weeks or 8 weeks until I think they'll face a defense that can really put that to the test.
Yeah. Okay. So we've covered the quarterbacks. We've covered the offensive line. We've covered the targets for the receivers. We've run through the defense pretty well. I think the last thing we want to talk about is the running back situation. And I do want to talk about Trevion Henderson, who in this game of 60 plays, I think had 5 carries. Is that right? 6 carries?
5 for 56.
5 for 56, and they threw it to him twice for 18. So that's 7 touches, did have 2 touchdowns. I thought it was a very kind of hot and cold game for Trevion Henderson because the one, okay, so they threw him 2 passes. The second one was an actual screen that we were all jumping up and down in the Slack channel and celebrating because we like when they throw screens and they don't do it that much.
Yep.
The first one was a swing pass to Trevion where the receiver out in front of him got his block, and it's basically like, it's sort of like Trevion and his guy, right? Now, this is how this play works, right? If you're going to swing a pass to the running back has to take care of one guy. And it felt like an opportunity. This is Trevion in space. This is what we want to see. And he just got tackled. And it wasn't a bad play. I think they might have gained 6 yards or something, right? But in that moment, I thought to myself, like, man, like that's like, what does Jahmyr Gibbs at Alabama last year do with that play, right? And if he's not going to be a hammer between the tackles, he's got to be, my God. They said on the broadcast, in the Big Ten broadcast, that the program, they call him Home Run Henderson. Do they?
No, that can't be right.
Home Run Henderson?
Can we talk about for like just half a second how bad that broadcast was? Because it was terrible.
So I'm not here to besmirch anybody, but I mean, it's just like I just get frustrated generally that every time, because when you have networks, right, switching around all the time, and it's always a new group of people and always it's like a new network, especially now in the Big Ten that they have 5 different places you can be, right? Fox, NBC, CBS, Big Ten Network, Peacock, FS1, 6. They always treat it like, let's take a look at the Olentangy River. And I'm like, can we just talk about that Jordan Hancock came in the game? Do you guys know that Jordan Hancock came in the game? Can we talk about Josh Simmons and talk about, like, let's analyze plays? But yeah, I thought it was odd. And I thought it was the thing that I don't like about it is it feels sometimes like they're talking down to people.
Yeah.
And they're being, what's the word? Like, not naive, but like they're puffing stuff up that's like not true. And it's like, oh, this guy. And it's like, can we just have a factual conversation? Like, we're not here to rip people, but come on. What are we doing? What did you think?
Well, that's a byproduct of all the information they get on the game. It comes out of their Friday conversations with the coaching staff, and they're not having the same conversations that we have. They don't have the context that we have. They don't have the critical eye for things that we have. And I also think probably sometimes in this conversation with coaches, the coaches are venting about the things that are said in the local media and by the fan base.
Oh, yeah.
And then the broadcasters in turn try to tell you like, no, you're wrong. It's okay. So then it comes off as like a little preachy at times.
So you didn't love it?
No, I didn't love it. It might have been Jake Butt's first game or second game. I think he is new to this, so like I'm not trying to bury a guy when he's just trying to do a job and get reps and be better at it. But I didn't love it.
It's just more about like the expectation of like how you're supposed to talk about it. It's like just be real, man. That's what we try to be here. We're trying to be real. So anyway, I just thought like that swing pass to Travion. And then he had the play where he ran wide and he like set the guy up for a hurdle and was super excited that he hurdled the guy and he got 2 yards. And those two things combined, I was like, this is not it. Like, this is not like we're going to give you the ball in space and you have to make one guy miss and try to make a play and you can't do it. And then it's like we're celebrating a hurdle for a 2-yard gain. And I was like, that's not it. This is not it. And then they had that wide run at the end where he gets wide, gets to the corner and looks like he's shot out of a cannon. It's like, that's it. So there were that's it moments. And he had 2 touchdown runs, one that called back. And so he had to do it again. And he did it. But it's not every play. And I'm in between on him still.
I think he is not the featured back in a good offense. I think he is the kind of secret weapon guy. You don't know what we're going to do with him when we get him out here because he's got a little bit of a diverse, explosive skill set. But he's not a guy you want to give the ball 25 times on a run between the tackles. I think we have enough evidence now to know that is the case. This is another game where he feasted on a bad, lower level defense. There is a pretty stark difference between his stats when he plays non-P5 teams and when he plays Power 5 teams. So I'm in between two. It makes me want to like go back and watch more of his freshman year because you just sort of look back at the cumulative statistical production of that year and think like, oh, he was awesome that year. I'm not saying he was bad. I'm just saying that maybe we're misremembering just like how consistently dynamic he was that year. Because I don't think he has been that over last season, certainly while he was hurt, and he hasn't been that through the first 2 games of this season. Now, he only ran it 5 times. Nobody else on the team had more than 6 carries. Perhaps we're making too much of that, but I don't want a running back. I don't want to give a running back an exceedingly high number of touches when he goes like 1 yard, 2 yards, 30 yards, -1 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, 60 yards. You know what I mean? Like I want 6 all the time. I want 7 all the time. And I'll live with not having the big home run hits.
And I'm pretty sure who also doesn't want to do that? It's Ryan Day.
Yeah.
So if you think Trevion Henderson is not the lead feature back on a winning team, does Ohio State have one of those? Or is this going to be a season where last year they didn't have it because of injuries and it was a very difficult year for the run game? Can they have a good run game this year if they don't have a guy that they rely on and they ride the hot hand or just split it up? Again, you said Trevion had 5 carries today. Chip and Mayan each had 6.
Yeah.
What's the best way for these guys to be used and the best possible outcome?
It probably is a balance of the 3. I have found Mayan Williams' usage a little puzzling these first 2 weeks. I wonder what of that is attributed to injury, and maybe that's something we can ask Ryan Day, because we didn't see him for a while in this game, and then he came and was like, oh yeah, Mayan Williams is still on the team. Neither like Mayan averaged 4.2 yards carry, Chip averaged 3.3 yards per carry. So like I'm not trying to say like this is not the game to hold those 2 up and say like, see, they're better than Trevion. I just think the answer is like of the 3, there's probably not a guy you want to give the ball to 20 times a game. So they're probably most likely to live in a world where the trio shares the load rather evenly, which I am okay with. I think it makes me like I am 2 games into this. I was wrong about their ability to run the ball this year and how they're going to feature that because it's not hitting right now. So I'll own that, but I think they can still have a good enough rushing attack even if they don't have the kind of workhorse we're talking about.
I'm going to ask a question that I think the answer has to be no, based on the usage in the first 2 games. Is it possible that their most consistent down to down, do what needs to be done, carrying the ball running back is Dallin Hayden, who has not played.
Who has not played? I mean, I thought that last year. Yeah. But he hasn't played this year.
He played one series in the last series with Devin Brown against Indiana last week. He did not play at all today. Here's the thing about this, and we have seen this. This was the year Tony Alford's done this a couple times, right? It was the year. What year was it? What was the year where it was like week to week, Mayan or Master Teague was the backup, depending who practiced better, and they sort of like spelled it out that way. Was that 21?
No, that was 20, wasn't it? When Trey Sermon was in the mix too, like we didn't know week to week who their starting running back was going to be.
Yeah, and it was like I am leaving open the door for. Oh, Dallin Hayden got 17 carries against Notre Dame. What happened? He had the best week of practice. Maybe not 17, 11. Like, would you leave that door open, or is it like no? Because they can't really play. They can't really play 3. They played 3 today. I don't think they can play 3. They are playing 3. 3 seems like a lot, but Georgia plays 3.
Georgia plays 3, yeah.
Georgia plays 3. But like the 3 Georgia played are kind of more productive than what this has been so far.
Yeah.
And the thing, like Georgia played 3 last year, and like Kenny McIntosh was the guy who caught it. And I want Travion to be. They ran a wheel again. They ran a wheel to Mayan last week, and they ran a wheel again to Mayan this week. They completed both of them, but every time they do it, I'm like, why isn't that Travion? So I get it, but Mayan clearly seems to be the goal line back. The goal line package is Mayan at tailback and Chip at fullback, right? That's official.
Yeah, that I didn't think that was a hole, by the way. Did you? That touchdown they took off the board?
No. I mean, they were trying to explain Mayan cut outside, and so that caused Chip to hold him. But I didn't think he had his hands outside the pads. I thought he was just on the guy the whole way.
He kind of like had his left arm, the outside arm, kind of hooked under the shoulder, but not in a way that I thought was holding. He just kind of like kept driving the guy into the ground. I don't know. Maybe the Youngstown State guy did a good job of selling it, but I did not think that was holding.
No, I didn't think that was holding either. So, but do we officially believe like that's the package inside the 10? Mayan at tailback, Chip at fullback, here and forever.
Yep.
So then and it feels like they'd like to give Chip a series here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes me wonder if there's room for Dallin. And I guess Dallin would maybe cut into some of the Trey stuff, but also if you're going to target Emeka and Marvin on 1/3 of your snaps, then okay, well, I don't know how much you're running it with the running back. By the way, I guess maybe I shouldn't be that wound up about the run game. 33 passes, 27 runs, and 7 of the runs were quarterback runs. So they're trying to throw it.
Yeah.
I want them to throw it. I want 60-40 breakdown. Are they going to be okay? Is there any reason on the list of things? We're ending the podcast with this. We've had some things that people, they're 2-0. They're not playing terrible. They're not maximizing who they are. Is who is that running back, and is that person good enough? Is that on the list of concerns, or are you confident this gets worked out one way or the other, even if we don't know what that's going to be?
If it's on the list of concerns, I think it's below a few other things. It's not anywhere near the top for me. I guess the thing that I wonder, it'd probably be, excuse me, I have a cold, I'm losing my voice, would be a good question for Ryan Day on Tuesday. Because the reason I thought the running game was going to be so good this year was I think like vibes I felt like I was picking up from them. Is this not what he thought it was? And then if it's not, what does that mean for the offense and how they have to tailor it differently moving forward? I think that perhaps is an issue in and of itself, but just sort of generally, I don't think it's going to be like Ohio State's ultimate undoing that they are perhaps not as dynamic running the football as I personally thought they were going to be.
Okay, we'll get to the last one because I think people are trying to take shots at me with this. And I want to ask if you think it is valid because I got it from more than one person. I'll use this one from Joseph. How many points would Colorado beat Ohio State by right now? That actually may not be a shot. He might mean that. I got some during the game because on our Monday show when we were ranking teams, and I had Colorado ranked ahead of Ohio State. Yeah. And I was sort of going like, all right, based on how they played on Saturday in week 1, who would have won, Colorado or Ohio State? And it took Colorado a while to get going against Nebraska, and they kind of got going because the Nebraska quarterback was terrible. And I think there was a Nebraska sports writer who made a good point that Matt Rule at Nebraska has done a lot of good things this offseason. And I think made a better structure at Nebraska, but he picked the wrong quarterback. They went and got a transfer portal quarterback that is not the guy, and it's biting them right now. So it was as much about Nebraska mistakes as it was about Colorado plays for much of the game, but Shadur Sanders was still 31 of 42 for 393 and 2 touchdowns. So I think while Colorado was struggling early and then they came around late and put it on Nebraska 36-14, I got some like, oh, Doug, is Colorado still better than Ohio State? But now actually I think maybe at the end, maybe I think he means it. It's not the most important comparison in the world. But when I see somebody like Shadur Sanders doing what he's doing and Travis Hunter still being Travis Hunter, and their defense did get after Nebraska, I had it on like my TV box as I was watching Ohio State on my main screen. Like, if that's one of those things, right? If you have a dynamic offense that's just going to make some plays and then a pass rush that gets after it a little bit, I think like foundationally, Colorado's not as good as Ohio State, but Colorado is making some upside plays in the first 2 weeks that I don't know that we're seeing Ohio State make.
Yeah, I think Colorado is much more spread out, and Colorado has more speed than Ohio State does. And just sort of goes about their business differently. I think a lot of people would like to see Ohio State be a little more wide open with their offense than it has been. And maybe that's the key to some of this, right? Maybe you want to see Dallin Hayden get some touches. Why don't you put him out on the field with Chip Trainum and 3 receivers? Like, why do you? There was a play where they had 3 tight ends and Xavier Johnson on the field earlier in the game, and they threw a swing pass to Xavier Johnson. Like, I do think that Ohio State handcuffs itself a little bit offensively with some of the personnel packages it wants to use. And when you look at it in comparison to some of the more dynamic or other dynamic offenses in the country, it just doesn't quite look the same. There's not as much flow to it. It doesn't seem quite as fun nor explosive. And I guess that there's some frustration that comes from that. But also, if they play tomorrow, I'd pick Ohio State to beat Nebraska.
Beat Nebraska or beat Colorado?
Or beat Colorado. Well, also Nebraska, but Colorado.
Well, I'd pick it to beat Colorado, but not Nebraska.
Yeah.
Matt Rule would have something for him.
Yeah.
Last thing, I'll end with this. This is just like an informational thing. So they start off with the 71-yard touchdown pass to Marvin Harrison Jr. They were drawing it up on the Big Ten Network. They had a Mecca and Marvin on the same side. Again, this is talking a lot about the way they used Marv in different ways. But they had a corner over Marv, and then they had a safety sort of hanging over a Mecca, but it was clear that was Emeka was like partially his responsibility. There's a linebacker involved in the coverage on Emeka too. But then the safety did not go with Marv, and Marv just ran by the corner, and it was over. Like, Marv didn't even have to do that much. Is that good play design by Ohio State to put Marvin and Emeka on the same side and put a Youngstown State safety or any safety in an untenable position? Or is that just like, man, that was some bad defense?
I think it was mostly a coverage bust, but I like them on the same side together. I think they can do more of it. And also sort of invert their responsibilities when they do that, because I think either one of them can do whichever job is necessary of the slot and the outside receiver on that given play. So that was what was encouraging from this game too, is that they did do some of that. I just would like to see them do it more, or feel confident that they're going to do it as much as they need to when they play better teams, which is still, I guess, an unknown, but it was nice to see.
I think we had said previously, if they line up Marv in the backfield in a game, we're going to be like, it's on. So they didn't line up Marv in the backfield, but they motioned him into that offset tight end and then ran that play you've already talked about, where he ran behind the line of scrimmage for a little flip pass. It was like, okay, they're bringing more than they brought last week.
Yeah, just like more creativity. That was my thing with them last year on offense too. I just feel like they were not as creative as they could have been if they wanted to be.
Notre Dame, the opponent in 2 weeks. 10 minutes left in that Notre Dame-NC State game as we record. 38-17 Notre Dame. So took Notre Dame a little while to get started, but they broke like a big 80-yard touchdown run, and now they're forcing some turnovers on defense, and like, Notre Dame's not looking too bad. I know you were doubting going into this week. Bottom line, Ohio State needs to be better, but they can get better. We'll continue to monitor that. You can follow us all week on the podcast feed, on our YouTube channel for the podcast. If you want to be a tech subscriber and be in on the fun, you can get 14 days of free fun. It's like a free vacation in your pocket, a vacation in your pocket. And then right at the end, it's like if you go in and say right at the end, like, there's a raccoon in my bed. And then they say, oh, well, comp the whole vacation. That's what it's like. But you don't have to say there's a raccoon in your bed. You just type stop, and then you get it for free. Or we'll set it up. You could also type, "There's a raccoon in my bed." And you can also stop and you'll get it for free. So we don't charge you until the end of 14 days. But if you like it at the end of 14 days, it's 20 cents a day, $6 a month. We're so grateful for anybody who rides with us on that. But if you don't want to do that, then just watch us and listen to us. So for those of you who joined us here on the live YouTube show, thank you for making us part of your Ohio State Saturday. We'll be doing this every Saturday. And if you're listening on the podcast, it dropped a little bit later. Thanks for finding us. I still think it's we're giving you everything that anybody else doing a post-game pod that's not live. You're not missing anything. So you can listen to it live or you listen to it a couple hours later and you're still getting the business from Landis, which is what everybody wants. Try the podcast daily in the morning. Landis, you and Berm will be back with a rewatch, right? That's still a Monday morning staple?
Yeah, that'll be Monday morning. On Sunday, you can look forward to Austin and Zach Boren breaking down the game from Zach's point of view. I don't think it's up yet, but at some point on Saturday, Snap Judgments from Austin and Boren will be up here. The Notebook from Austin will be up here. So plenty of more coverage coming from this game.
All right. We appreciate you guys for being here. We would be jobless without you, and we never forget that. We'll integrate the tech subscribers even more into our shows on a regular basis because you help us understand what Ohio State fans are thinking. For now, the Buckeyes 35-7 winners over Youngstown State. For Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was the post-game show on the podcast.